Sir, 1 minute. Sir, 1 minute. Sir, we are good to go.
Okay. Have you turned off the waiting room also?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Waiting room.
Good evening, everyone. At the outset, would like to apologize everyone because we had to postpone this session. Earlier, this session was scheduled on 14th of June. But because of some health issues at my end, we had to postpone this schedule. So the topic which we are going to discuss today is place of supply. So this is the second part of place of supply provisions. But in today's session, we'll be discussing the international transactions. So in the session one, which was taken by my partner Darshan, he had dealt with place of supply for domestic transactions. In today's sessions, we'll be dealing with place of supply for international transactions. So as you can see on the screen, majorly only two items we'll be touching upon. The rows which I have highlighted in red color. These two types of transactions we'll be touching upon in today's meeting. The first one is the import of goods or services, imports of goods and services. And second is export of goods and services. So only these aspects we'll be covering in today's session, and the place of supply provisions which are impacting import and export transactions of goods and services. So if you look at the overall picture of place of supply provisions which are defined in IGST Act, there are primarily only 4 sections which deal with them: Section 10, Section 11, Section 12, and Section 13 of IGST Act. These are the 4 sections primarily which deal with place of supply provisions. And my partner Darshan has already discussed Section 10 and Section 12 with you all because they deal with domestic transactions, place of supply for domestic transactions. Today, because we'll be dealing only with the international transactions, we'll be touching upon Section 11 and Section 13 of IGST Act. Section 11 deals with place of supply provisions for goods for international transactions, and Section 13 of IGST Act deals with place of supply of services for international transactions. So we'll first start with Section 11, place of supply for goods, international transactions. And before really going into Section 11, let us quickly touch upon the definition of export and import of goods which are defined in the GST law. Section 2, subsection 5 of IGST Act 2017 defines the term export of goods. And it is defined as export of goods with its grammatical variations and cognate expressions means taking goods out of India to a place outside India. It's quite a simple definition. Basically, what it says is that the goods should be taken out of India. The goods should cross customs frontier of India, then only it will be treated as export of goods. Then we have import of goods. The term import of goods also defined in the IGST Act. Section 2, subsection 10 of IGST Act defines import of goods as import of goods with its grammatical variations and cognate expressions means bringing goods into India from a place outside India. So this is also a simple definition. What it basically says is that goods should come into India from a place outside India. So goods should cross the customs frontier of India and they should come inside India. Then only it will be treated as import of goods. Now with this background of definition of export of goods and import of goods, we will try to understand Section 11 of IGST Act, which deals with place of supply of goods for international transactions. And Section 11 of IGST Act states that the place of supply of goods in cases where goods are imported into India shall be the location of the importer. So in case of import of goods, the place of supply is defined to be the location of the importer. And therefore, as we all know that whenever our goods are imported into India, when we file bill of entry, Along with the customs duty, even IGST tax is charged in the bill of entry, because the place of supply is location of importer, and importer being into taxable territory, it is treated as a taxable transaction. Clause B says that place of supply of goods in cases where goods are exported from India shall be the location outside India. Therefore, the place of supply being outside India, we all know that if various conditions as defined in the law are satisfied, it is treated as a zero rated supply. Because in case of export of goods, the place of supply is defined to be location which is outside India, the place where goods are exported. So section 11 is quite simple. It only defines the place of supply for import of goods and export of goods. With this, we will go to the next section, which is part of our today's discussion, and it is section 13 of IGST Act, which deals with place of supply of services for international transactions. Please note that section 13 is applicable only in cases where either the supplier or recipient to the transaction is located outside India. So one of the parties to the transaction, the supplier or the recipient, should be located outside India, then only we can refer to section 13. If both the parties are located in India, then we have to refer to section 11. But section 13 can be referred only when either of the parties, that is supplier or recipient, is located outside India. Now, before going into section 13, which deals with place of supply provisions, let us quickly touch upon the definition of export and import of services. First, we will deal with the definition of export of services, and it is defined in section 2, subsection 6 of IGST Act. Now, it is defined as export of services means the supply of any service when the supplier of service is located in India, the recipient of service is located outside India, the place of supply of service is outside India, the payment for such service has been received by the supplier of service in convertible foreign exchange. So basically, convertible foreign exchange should come in India, and the supplier of service and the recipient of service are not merely establishments of a distinct person, in accordance with explanation 1 in section 8. So these are certain conditions, 5 conditions basically, for satisfying the definition of export of service. First, the supplier should be located in India. Second, the recipient should be located outside India. Third, the place of supply should be outside India. And how to determine that place of supply, we will see in section 13 in our subsequent slides. The fourth condition is that the consideration should be received in foreign convertible exchange. And fifth condition is that they should not be merely establishments of distinct person. Now, what do you mean by they should not be an establishments of distinct person? Well, let's take an example that there is a company in India who is also having a branch outside India. So they have a branch office in foreign country. Now, in this case, the Indian company and the foreign branch will be treated as distinct person, establishments of distinct person, and therefore any supply happening from the Indian office to the foreign branch office will not be treated as an export transaction, because the definition of export of service clearly excludes the transaction between establishments of distinct person. Next, we will go to the definition of import of services, and it is defined in section 2, subsection 11 of IGST Act. It is defined as import of services means supply of any service where the supplier of services is located outside India, the recipient of service is located in India, and the place of supply of service is in India. This is quite a simple definition compared to the definition of export of service. Only 3 conditions. The supplier should be located outside India, recipient should be located in India, and the place of supply should be in India. Now, with this background, we'll start with section 13, which deals with place of supply provisions for services, international transactions. And as I mentioned earlier, that section 13 is to be referred only in cases where either the supplier or recipient of service is located outside India. And then comes the first clause, which is clause number 2, which deals with general scenarios. So basically in section 13, there are various scenarios. There are 8 to 10 different scenarios whereby specific provisions are there for specific kinds of services. And if you are fitting in those particular types of services, then you have to refer to those particular clauses. But if you are not specifically fitting on any of those clauses, then you have to refer to this general clause, which is clause number 2. And it says that in such cases, the place of supply of service shall be, if the location of recipient is available, then the place of supply shall be the location of the recipient. And if the location of recipient is not known, then the place of supply shall be the location of the supplier of service. This is quite simple. If the location of recipient is known, then the place of supply will be location of recipient. And if location of recipient is not known, then the place of supply shall be the location of supplier of service. Now with this, we'll try to understand that what are the exceptions which are given to the general clause. And this is a list of exceptions to the general clause. The first one is the performance-based services. The next is services which are in relation to immovable property. Then we have admission to an event, services which deal with admission to an event. Then we have services in relation to banking and financial services, services provided by the intermediaries, services of hiring of means of transport, services of transportation of goods, passenger transportation service, supply of service on board a conveyance, and OIDAR services. This is the list of exceptions of services to the general rule. Now we'll deal with each of the services one by one, and we'll try to understand that how the place of supply is defined for each of these type of services. The first one is performance-based services. It is defined in section 13, subsection 3 of IGST Act, and it is divided into two parts. Clause A deals with place of supply for performance-based services for goods, and clause B deals with place of supply of services for performance-based services for services. So first we'll deal with the goods part of it. And it states that when the service is supplied in respect of goods which are physically made available by the recipient of service to the supplier of service or to a person acting on behalf of the supplier, in such cases, the place of supply shall be the location where the services are actually performed. Now I'll further try to explain you, what kind of transactions can be covered by this clause. In next slide, I'll try to explain through a help of an example. But in this particular subsection, we also have a proviso which says that if service is provided from a remote location by way of electronic means, then the place of supply shall be the location where the goods are situated at the time of supply of services. And then we have a second proviso which says that this clause shall not apply where goods are temporarily imported into India for repairs, treatment, or processes and are then exported without being put to use in India. So these are the two provisos which are given in this particular section. And let us try to understand with the help of an example that what kind of scenarios can get covered in this particular section. Let us take an example that there is a pharma company or a recipient who is located outside India. They are into manufacturing of various kinds of medicines. And we all know that manufacturing process of a medicine is quite complex. Before the medicine is actually released into market for use by general public, they have to go through various kinds of testings and approvals. So this particular pharma company, they have their research center and they have their manufacturing plants outside India. They have developed some formula or a medicine, and to check the viability of that medicine, they have sent it to a laboratory which is based in India. They have sent these medicines to a laboratory which are based in India. Now, this particular laboratory which is based in India, they are doing testings of this particular medicine, and they will be giving their reports to the company which is based outside India. So basically, the service by the Indian laboratory is given to the recipient who is located outside India. Now, in this kind of scenario, as we can see that the supplier is located in India, the recipient of service is located outside India. But because the goods on which this treatment of testing, or basically the service of testing is being done, is done in India, the goods on which testing is to be done are actually brought into India and then testing is done in India. Therefore, the place of supply for this kind of activity is defined to be the location of the supplier, or location where the activity is actually performed. In this case, in this example which we are dealing with, the medicines are brought into India and testing is done on it, and therefore the place of supply is defined to be location where the services are actually performed. Hope I could explain this example to everyone clearly. If you have any doubts, we can discuss them at the end of the session. Now, next we will be dealing with clause B, which primarily deals with place of supply for performance-based services for services. So the earlier clause which we saw dealt with goods. Now we'll be dealing with services. And it is defined as a service supplied to an individual or a person acting on behalf of the recipient, which requires physical presence of the recipient of service with the supplier for supply of such service. And in that case, the place of supply is defined as the location where the services are actually performed. Let us try to understand this with the help of an example. There is a lady who is based outside India, or she is a resident of a foreign country. There is a beauty parlor which is there in India. Now this lady is coming to India for some vacation, or for some vacation she is coming to India, and she is visiting this particular beauty parlor to avail beauty treatment services. Now in this case, though the beautification or the beauty parlor services are provided by the salon to the customer who is actually the resident of foreign country, but because these services are performed in India, the customer had to actually physically come to India to avail the services. If she would have not come to India, the beauty parlor would not have been able to provide the services to this particular lady. So because this lady had come down to India, to the beauty parlor in India, and has availed services in India, the place of supply is defined as the location where the services are actually performed. And because the services are performed in beauty parlor which is based in India, the place of supply is India. Next, we will deal with section 13, subsection 4, which deals with primarily.
Okay.
Which deals with place of supply of services in case of
international transactions.
Aman, can you mute the participants?
Yes, sir. 1 second.
બધા કોઈ ખ્યાલ ઓફિસમાં શું કામ સાંભળો અચ્છા
So done.
And this particular subsection says that place of supply of services in case of transactions which are in relation to an immovable property, including the services which are provided by architects, interior decorators, surveyors, engineers, estate agents, or experts, which also involve grant of right to use such immovable property, or services which are in relation to carrying out or coordination of construction work, or services which are in relation to lodging or accommodation, which are primarily done by hotels, guest house, club, homestays, etc. In such kind of transactions for such kind of services which are in relation to an immovable property, the place of supply of service shall be the location of location of the immovable property. Let us try to understand this with the help of some examples. Say there is a property owner, or there is a individual who is a resident of foreign country. There is an architect who is based in India and who is operating from India. Now this particular gentleman, he has purchased a plot in India and he wants to get a villa constructed on that particular plot. Now for getting this villa constructed, the property owner has approached an architect and has asked him to prepare drawings or prepare a plan for the villa which is to be constructed on this particular plot. Now, though this architect is giving service to a person who is located outside India, but because the service is in relation to an immovable property which is located in India, as per the provisions we saw, the place of supply will be India, because the property for which the drawings and the plans the architect will be preparing is based in India, and therefore the place of supply of service will be India, despite of the fact that the recipient of service, that is the property owner, is located outside India. Let us take one more example. There is a tourist who is a resident of foreign country, and there is a hotel in India. So this tourist is coming to visit India, and during his travel he is staying in a hotel which is located in India. Now, though this tourist is a resident of foreign country and the hotel is supplying the accommodation service to a person who is resident of foreign country, but because this hotel is located in India, as per the provisions, the place of supply will be location of immovable property, that is location of hotel, and therefore the tax will be payable in India, because the place of supply is defined to be the location of immovable property, which is India. Now with this background, we'll go to the next subsection, which is subsection 5, and it states that the place of supply of services supplied by way of admission to a or organization of a cultural, artistic, sporting, scientific, educational or entertainment event, or a celebration, conference, fair, exhibition or similar events, and of services ancillary to such admission or organization shall be the place where the event is actually held. So this particular subsection deals with services which are in relation to admission or organization of an event, and the place of supply is defined to be the place where event is actually held. Now let us try to understand this with the help of an example. Well, there is an IPL fan who is a resident of foreign country. He loves watching IPL games. So he decided to come down to India and watch the match live in the stadium. So he comes to India and watches the match. Now in this case, despite the stadium is giving service to the person who is resident of foreign country, but because this event, this match is being played in India, the place of supply is held to be the location of stadium, and therefore tax will be payable in India, because the supplier is in India and the place of supply is in India. Place of supply is the location where the event is actually held. Let us try to understand this with the help of one more example. So there is a participant or a recipient of service who is a resident of foreign country and there is an exhibition which is going to be conducted in India. Now this gentleman who is a resident of foreign country, he wants to participate in the exhibition which is being held in India. He comes down to India and he participates in this particular exhibition. Now the services of participating in the exhibition by the event company are given to the recipient who is located outside India. But because this event is being held in India, the place of supply will be the location where the event is actually held. And therefore, in this particular case, the tax will be payable in India because the place of supply is defined to be the location where the event is actually held. With this, we'll go to the next subsection. And in this particular subsection, basically it states that the services, the three exceptional services which we just saw, performance-based services, immovable property-related services, and services which are in relation to organization and admission to an event. If these services are supplied at more than one location, and one of this location is the taxable territory, then in that particular case, the place of supply will be the location of the taxable territory and tax will be payable in India. So what basically this this section says is that, say for example, a performance-based services. In one particular service, there are 2-3 legs, of which one leg has been performed in India and one leg is performed outside India. So because one leg of the service is performed in India, the entire transaction will be treated as performed in India and tax will be payable in India because place of supply is defined as a location of the taxable territory. We'll go to the next subsection, which is similar to this previous subsection which we saw. Then again, it deals with the services of exceptional nature, performance-based services, immovable property, and organization admission to an event. And this clause is that if it is supplied, if the services are supplied in more than one state or union territory. So if there are 2-3 legs to a supply, and if one leg of the supply is performed in state of Maharashtra, one leg of supply is performed in the state of Gujarat, then the place of supply is defined to be location in each of the states, and on proportionate basis, the number of days or the values basis which the services are performed in each of the states, the tax will be payable in each of the states or union territories where the supplies are being performed. With this background, we'll go to subsection 8. And subsection 8 of section 13 deals with 3 different kinds of scenarios. We'll deal with the first scenario, and it says that the place of supply of following service shall be the location of supply of service. Namely, services supplied by a banking company or a financial institution or a non-banking financial company to account holders. So basically what this entry is trying to say is that the services which are supplied by a banking company or a financial institution or a non-banking financial companies to the account holders, for them, the place of supply will be the location of supplier of service. That is basically the supplier, the location of the banking company or the financial institution. Location where they are situated, that will be the place of supply of service. And in this particular subsection, they have also defined the terms account, banking company, and financial institutions. Now let us try to understand this with the help of an example. Say there is a NRO or an NRE account holder who is located outside India. He is a resident of foreign company. There is a bank in India, and this gentleman has opened the bank account with this bank in India and is regularly doing transactions with in this particular account with the bank which is situated in India. Now, despite of the fact that the bank is giving service to a person or an account holder who is located outside India, but because of this provision, the place of supply is defined to be the location of bank, and therefore the place of supply will be the location of bank and GST will be payable in India. We'll go to the next part of this section, which deals with place of supply of services for intermediary services. And this section says that the place of supply of service in case of intermediary services shall be location of supplier of service. And what do you mean by intermediary service? So the term intermediary is also defined in the IGST Act. Section 2, subsection 13 defines the term intermediary as a broker, agent, or any other person by whatever name called, who arranges or facilitates the supply of goods or services or both, or securities, between two or more persons, but does not include a person who supplies such goods or services or both or securities on his own account. So basically, intermediary means an agent or a broker. Now let us try to understand this with the help of an example. Say there is a foreign travel agent who is located outside India, and there is a hotel who is located in India. Now, this hotel has listed its property in the on the website of this foreign travel agent, and the customers of this foreign travel agent, they are booking rooms in the hotel which is located in India. Now, in this case, the service is given by the foreign travel agent to the hotel which is located in India, and the hotel will be paying commission to this foreign travel agent. Now, despite of fact that the service is provided by the foreign resident, but because the place of supply is defined to be the location of intermediary, and in this case the intermediary is a foreign travel agent, and because the place of supply for intermediary services is defined to be location of intermediary, the place of supply will be location of intermediary which is outside India. And depending on whether other conditions are satisfied or not, this can be treated as an export of service and treated as a zero rated supply. With this, we'll go to the next part, which deals with place of supply for services which are in relation to hiring of means of transport. And for this, the provision says that the place of supply shall be location of supplier of service. For the services which are in relation to hiring of means of transport, the place of supply shall be location of supplier of service. And let's take an example of a tourist who is a resident of foreign country. He is coming to India to travel in India, and he is renting a bike in India. Now, in this case, though the renting company has given service to the foreign resident, but because the renting service is given in India, and as per the provisions which we just saw, the place of supply shall be the location. The place of supply shall be the location where the services of renting of hiring are actually given. The location of supplier of service shall be the place of supply, and because the supplier of service that is the renting company is located in India, the place of supply will be in India, despite of the fact that the services are given to a person who is a resident of foreign country. This background, we will go to the next subsection, which deals with place of supply for transportation of goods. And this provision says that the place of supply for transportation of goods other than by way of mail or courier shall be the place of destination of such goods. Now let us take an example of a recipient or a goods owner who is located outside India. He has some goods which are stored in India, and he wants these goods which are stored in India to be transported from India to his location outside India. So he is approaching a shipping company that these are my goods in India. I want you to ship these goods to my location in foreign country. Now, in this case, the place of supply will be the destination of goods, which is the location outside India, and therefore, depending on the whether other conditions are satisfied or not, this can be treated as an export of service, because place of supply is defined to be location of the destination of such goods. And with this background, we'll try to understand various kinds of scenarios and their taxabilities in the GST regime. The first one being the export of goods by air. And in this case, if the customer is Indian, then the supply will be treated as an exempt supply basis the provisions of section 12 subsection 8. And this exemption is available only up to 30th of September 2022. The next scenario is whereby the goods are exported by air and the customer is a foreign customer. Now this will be treated as an export transaction basis provisions of subsection 13 subsection 9, which we just saw. The third scenario is import of goods by air, and if the customer is Indian, then again it will be treated as an exempt transaction. Fourth scenario, the goods are imported by air, but the customer is a foreign customer. Again, it will be treated as an exempt transaction. Fifth scenario, goods are exported by sea, but the customer is an Indian customer. In that particular case, again, it will be treated as an exempt transaction as per provisions of section 12(8). And this exemption is available only up to 30th of September 2022. The next scenario is export of goods by sea. Customer is a foreign customer. This will be treated as an export transaction as per provisions of section 13(9), which we just saw. Second last scenario, goods are imported by sea and the customer is an Indian customer. Now this will be treated as a taxable transaction and the applicable GST rate is 5%. Last kind of scenario where the goods are imported by sea, the customer is a foreign customer. Now we all are aware about the recent Supreme Court ruling in the case of Mohit Minerals, where they have specifically held that if it's a CIF transaction, then there is no requirement to pay GST under RCM. But if it's a FOB transaction, then tax will be payable in India. Now, with this background, we'll go to the next subsection, which is subsection 10, and it deals with place of supply for passenger transportation services. And it says that the place of supply in respect of passenger transportation services shall be the place where the passenger embarks on the conveyance for a continuous journey. Now, let us try to understand this with the help of an example. So there is a traveler who is located outside India. He is say in Australia. There is a person who is based in Australia. He wants to come to India and he has booked ticket with Air India. Now this person will be embarking his journey from Australia. Now though Air India is giving service to a customer who is ultimately coming to India, but because this traveler is embarking or starting his journey from a location which is outside India, the place of supply will be treated as the location of embarkation of journey, which is outside India. And depending on the various other conditions are satisfied or not, this can be treated as an export of service. Going to the next subsection, which basically deals with supply of onboard services. And the provision says that the place of supply of services on board a conveyance during the course of a passenger transportation operation, including services intended to be wholly or substantially consumed while on board, shall be the first scheduled point of departure of that conveyance for that journey. Now let's take an example over here. So there is a traveler who is located outside India. Say for example, he is in Australia and he is boarding flight to come to India. Now he has boarded flight from Australia, and when he is on flight, the airline is serving him food and the airline is giving him various other services. Now let us assume that the services are actually performed when the aircraft is in the territory of India, or it's in the territory of India. Now, despite of the fact that the services are performed when the aircraft is in the airspace of India, but because the provision says that the place of supply shall be the location from where the first scheduled point of departure of that conveyance for that journey is. And in this particular case, because the first point of journey is the location of Australia, the place of supply will be treated as the location of foreign country, which is Australia. Going to the next part, which deals with OIDAR services. And what do you mean by OIDAR services? And this it is defined in section 2 subsection 17 of IGST Act as services whose delivery is mediated by information technology over the internet or an electronic network, and the nature of which renders their supply essentially automated and involving minimal human intervention and impossible to ensure in the absence of information technology. So basically the various kinds of examples which are covered in OIDR services are the advertisements over the internet, the cloud services which we use, e-books, movies, music, software, and other intangibles through telecommunication networks or internet, providing data or information which is retrievable or otherwise to any person in electronic form, online supply of digital content like movies, television shows, music, etc., digital data storage, online gaming. So basically these are various examples of online information and database access or retrieval services, or shortly called as OIDAR services. For this kind of services, the place of supply is defined to be the location of the recipient of service. So the person who is actually consuming this service, place of supply will be location of that particular recipient of service. And with this background, we have covered section 13 as well. So today we have dealt with section 11, which deals with place of supply of goods for international transactions. And we have also covered section 13, which deals with place of supply of services for international transactions. With this, I end my presentation over here. And if any participant has any questions, you can either raise your hand or post your query on the chat box. Okay, so I don't think we have any questions right now. So we all will be meeting again on coming Tuesday, whereby my partner Darshan will be taking us through the certain provisions of input tax credit. So see you all again on Tuesday. Thank you. Bye bye. Aman, we can close the session.